Does your student's SAT score really matter when it comes to qualifying for scholarships? Do they really need an SAT score at all? Is that the only way to get money? These are questions that often families will ask me, and you might be happy to hear that there are alternatives if your student has not perfected the SAT score. Now, that said, of course, there are certain doors that open if your student has. So in today's video, I want to cover not just what to do if your student does test well and how they can test well to get more money through SATs, but also I'm going to cover what to do for those who have students that are not the best test takers. In fact, actually, you might be surprised to hear that even though I received a free ride, I received over six figures in scholarships, none of mine were based on SAT because I was actually a horrible test taker. So I had to find money from other sources. So that said, again, it definitely can open up the doors to some money, which I'm going to show you where to find that. But if your student is not a great test taker, we're going to cover what to do for your family too. Now, make sure you hit subscribe because every single week we're giving a new strategy on how to pay for college without student loan debt. Hello, my name is Jocelyn Pearson, founder of the Scholarship System, and I got to where I got a complete free ride, including receiving an overage check every single semester to help me pay for college. Now, like I mentioned, for me, SATs were not a huge part of my path to paying for college. However, they can be for many students. Now, as far as what is a competitive score, I can't necessarily give you a number for that because they can vary. Of course, the higher to perfection, the better. But really, this actually depends on the schools that your student is looking at. For example, if they are considering going to Harvard, they're going to need a much higher score to be competitive than if they were going to maybe their state university or some small liberal arts university. So while I could tell you some rules of thumb on score, really it does depend on the competition. Now, I want to talk about some specific ways to get money by having a high SAT score. And the first is actually based on the PSAT, which is a practice SAT exam that all high school students take. In order to qualify for potential money, they have to take the PSAT before the end of their junior year. However, they can certainly take it earlier if they want to. But if your student is in the top percentile of their PSAT scores in their state, then they could be eligible for not only a National Merit Scholarship, which is $2,500 at the time of recording this, and it might vary by state, it might be a little more, but they can also qualify for corporation-sponsored scholarships that are specific for national merit students. And then also some universities will actually give out money just for national merit students. In fact, some schools will tout how many national merit finalists or how many national merit students they have enrolled in a school year. So this can be pretty prestigious if your student does get a really high score on the PSAT. Now, let me know in the comments below, did your student take the PSAT? Did you know that it could lead to money? It might be surprising to you, so I'm curious if that is the case. Let me know in the comments below. Now, beyond the PSAT, the SAT can lead to money as well. So usually this would be through the university. If your student has a high SAT score, they might be able to qualify for automatic merit aid, which I'll explain in a bit, or competitive merit aid. So it depends on how the school handles it. Now, of course, COVID has changed this. So COVID, as many know, the students could not get the SATs or ACT scores because the testing centers simply were not doing the exams. They weren't open. So a lot of universities have actually changed to a more well-rounded focus. For example, looking at your students' academic rigor, what their resume says, their essays, rather than just basing it on test scores. That said, there still is money out there where one of the optional criteria could be to qualify by taking this exam. So it certainly doesn't mean that these are not used anymore. That is not what I'm saying. It's just that there's good news for those that are not good test takers because colleges have created new processes because of COVID around getting around using these test scores as the primary source of choosing who gets merit money. Now, when it comes to getting money from a university, the rule of thumb that we say is that your student wants to be in the top 25th percentile of the scores. So this again is where it depends on the school. If the school has a low average SAT score and your student's SAT score is well above that average, then the chances of them getting money from the university are much higher. However, if your student scores under the average, then the chances of them getting money based on their test scores are very low. I want to give you just a couple examples of merit money through universities. So here is one by the Florida Gulf Coast University, and this is where they're talking about automatic merit aid. So in this case, your student just has to hit the criteria and they can automatically qualify. So you can see here they have a President's Gold, which is $5,000 per year up to 4 years, and this is based off of a 1320 SAT or a 28 ACT. So, and then it goes down if your student is maybe a little lower on the GPA or the test scores, they still have a lot of money here available to students based on what they're getting. But as you can see here, it specifically says that students will be automatically considered for these awards if they apply by a certain date. So it's not like your student has to continue to compete in order to access this money. Now, another example is University of Missouri. So they have automatic awards as well, where your student just has to meet certain criteria with GPA and test scores. So you can see here that this is an annual amount, so up to 4 years, they can receive this money. And it starts at $3,000 per year up to $6,500 per year at the time of recording this. Now, one of the things that I love on their website, if you keep scrolling down, is you can see the resident automatic awards chart. So this gives you a rough idea of where your student is with their GPA and their SAT or ACT score and how much money they will receive automatically based on this chart. Now, one of the cool things about this, if your family has not yet chosen a school, is that you can do the research ahead of time. You could do this research as soon as your student's sophomore year in high school if they think they know where they want to go to college, and you can shoot for that SAT score that they need in order to qualify for this money. So that is something that you can do as a goal with your student in order to increase their chances of getting the money based on SAT scores. Now, the thing with SAT scores is that the scores can change dramatically with preparation. SATs we've seen where a student simply just takes it a second time and knows what to expect, and their score goes up drastically just because they're more comfortable. So this is actually one of the arguments with SAT scores, is that sometimes they're not necessarily testing their capabilities to succeed in college, but more so just their abilities to take an exam. But that said, prepping is certainly an important part of increasing your students' chances of getting money by using SAT scores. Now, one of the first ways that students prep is the PSAT. So the PSAT is a preliminary SAT test that they can take their junior year in order to get a feel for the SAT and also to get an idea of where they might score. If they get low on this, don't worry. They still have a lot of opportunity to increase their abilities before they take the official SAT exam. Many students will take this their 10th and 11th grade, just in case. Now, another source that I love are practice lessons, practice SAT classes. There are tons of free resources out there that your student can utilize, in addition to paid courses and teachers that are well versed in the tactics to increase their scores. Still, we always recommend taking a full SAT practice test before they actually sit down for the exam. And also we recommend taking the SATs twice because, again, as I mentioned earlier, we've seen a lot of scores go up just simply by getting it under their belt again because they're just more comfortable with it. Now, I don't recommend students doing it more than 3 times, 4 times max, just because at that point you are just utilizing so much energy for very minimal increases. Some great places to get some free training. Of course, YouTube is a great source. College Board has free practice exams on their website. Khan Academy also has a ton of free resources. And of course, a last alternative could be to just buy the SAT prep book off of Amazon. Don't think you have to get the newest edition. It's going to be way more expensive and you can just get an edition back or so. But having your students sit down with a friend and work through a practice exam can be a huge help as well. Now, the last thing I want to mention around increasing scores is sometimes the ACT will be a better fit for your student. So sometimes it's best for your student to do the SAT and the ACT once, see which one they tested better with, see which one they enjoyed, and go for that one. So it doesn't necessarily have to be the SAT that they are focusing on. They might test better with the ACT and they may want to change their focus to that. Now, one of the things I talked about earlier is that I actually received over 6 figures in scholarships without a high SAT score. So for those of you that have students that are not good test takers, still follow the tips on how to look for the scores, shoot for the scores, improve scores, but you should also focus on outside scholarships. This is private money from so many different sources that your student can apply to, and many of them do not even ask for SAT or ACT scores. In fact, through the scholarship system, we give out scholarships every single year, and we do not use any kind of scores, not even GPA, for determining our winners. So there's tons of money out there for students, even if they do not have a high SAT score. Now, for those of you that do have a good test taker, you can do this too. So what I did was I included a free training below. You can go to the scholarshipsystem.com/free training, or just click on the link in the description and register for that training to learn where to find legitimate scholarships that your student can go for that are not focused on SAT scores. So in the end, the SAT score can certainly open up doors to more money. If your student has the ability to get a high SAT score, then that's amazing. You can potentially save tens of thousands of dollars on their cost of education. But if you have a student that is not a good test taker, it's okay. It's not over. You're not out of luck when it comes to paying for college. There's still strategies for you. So make sure that you click subscribe, because I am releasing a new strategy every single week that do not rely on test scores, but also register for that free training I just mentioned in the description below. All right, everyone. My name is Jocelyn Pearson, founder of the Scholarship System, and I will see you in the next video.